Hey viewers, welcome to VL Astrology once again. And today I have Sir James Braha again on my channel. Should I share the charts, sir? You want to discuss a few
Yeah.
charts?
Okay.
Okay.
So this is not going to be a whole chart reading. It's just going to be some things
Yes.
that you might miss otherwise. Okay. So
Mhm.
first of all, we want to know that this is a Virgo ascendant, and Mercury has its great year in the 34th year. So between the age of 33 and 34, which in
Mhm.
this case is fairly recently, a few years ago, between 33 and 34, that's when the person could know fully who they are. And Mercury is in a Raja Yoga
Mhm.
in the sixth house with Venus, very close to Venus. So in general, that would be a good year for this person. If
Mhm.
Mercury was in bad shape, it would be a bad year. But more important, whether they're good or bad, is that that person would not know who they are until the great year of Mercury. And you're going to find with the great years, oftentimes this is when someone will get divorced. They've been putting up with a bad marriage. Maybe it's a Capricorn or Aquarius ascendant, where the great year is the 36th year, or maybe it's the 28th year of Mars with Scorpio or Aries ascendant, or maybe the 34th year of Gemini and Virgo. But if they're in a bad marriage and they're putting up with it, when they finally know who they are, they dump the marriage. Or if they're in a career they don't like, finally they gain some confidence because the great year comes up, they get rid of that career. That's assuming that the planet ruling the ascendant has its great year and the planet's not terribly afflicted, because then things could get worse. Now, right away, people are going to see the four planets in the sixth house and they're going to say, oh my God, what a fantastic sixth house. And look at the Raja Yoga in the sixth, and Jupiter, three benefics in the sixth. God, and malefics in the sixth are good. And right away, they think the sixth house is the best house of the chart. Guess what? The 12th house is the strongest house in the chart. Why? Whenever you see a stellium of planets, whether they're positive or negative, they could be good, they could be bad, look at the opposite house. You're going to get a lot of energy too. So the reason the 12th house is stronger is because all those planets are aspecting the 12th house, and the sun aspecting Leo. The sun is aspecting its own sign. And the Raja Yoga, people don't always realize this, but so there's a Raja Yoga in the sixth house. This person is going to be a healer. They can be a great healer. They can do, detail work and things like that. The Raja Yoga of Mercury, Venus also aspects the 12th house. So the 12th house is aspected by its own sign, the sun, and the 12th house is getting a Raja Yoga aspect. The sun is not so good. The sun is good here because it's very close to Jupiter, but the sun's in Aquarius, not as good. It's just, all I'm saying is the 12th house is clearly better than the sixth. The sixth is great. The 12th is magnificent. So it's great for moksha or enlightenment. If this person was a Westerner, there's no question they'd be a healer because of the sixth house. Now, they would also be very intent on enlightenment and moksha from the 12th house, but they'd also be a healer. But because this person's born in India, the Mars Saturn could make them an engineer, make them mechanical technical skills. But the strongest talents, number one is moksha. Number two is the sixth house, which is the healing and defeating enemies and competitors and anything like that, detail work. But the Mars Saturn, now this is a very tight Mars Saturn, so it's not a great aspect because there's going to be a push pull. Every time there's a desire, Saturn says hold back. But two malefics in the third house are going to be great for mechanical technical skills. However, they're not going to be great for younger siblings. If there's a younger sibling under this, the first sibling, this person might not even have younger siblings because Mars, even though it's in its own sign, is aspected so tightly by Saturn, there might not even be any. But if there is a younger sibling, the one right below is going to be problematic. Either the relationship with the sibling or the sibling's life will be difficult. Now, the one thing about this is look at the aspect that Ketu throws onto the sun. Ketu is 9 degrees and the sun is 9 degrees. Now, this could be terrible for the father. The father looks fantastic because the sun is in between, the sun is the father, sun's in between 3 benefics. But that Ketu aspect on the father could be very damaging. But it could simply be that the father is super spiritual and metaphysical, especially for an Indian. But also, the sun is ruling the house of moksha, and it's aspected by this metaphysical psychic planet. So it's increasing. The person's 12th house is already fantastic for moksha. And now the sun is aspected by Ketu. It's just, to me, I think it's a super spiritual influence.
So from moon, all the planets are in the 8th house. Do you want to comment on that as well?
I don't use the Chandra Lagna. I don't find it. Now, you can't miss it. So it's very metaphysical and psychic and metaphysical and all that. The person is already metaphysical and spiritual and psychic from the 12th house. But I don't find, I have enough to look at without Chandra Lagna when there's a planet 7 houses away from the moon. It always works.
Because most of the audience, they keep putting up, though when I'm making the transit videos, they will ask first question that will be from ascendant or the moon sign. I wanted to ask that as well because how do you
transits, you have to use both.
Yes.
I have a sutra in the book about this. It's about the common sense that you have to use. First of all, when you read in the books, it always says use transits from the moon. They don't tell you to use it from the ascendant because it's so obvious. Jyotish is an oral profession, and they know the teachers would have told you to use it. But aside from that, use your common sense. So if a person is born with the moon in a particular house, it means that everybody born on the same day, exact same transits.
True.
So if a person's born on this day and the moon is in Cancer, everybody on that day has the exact same transit. That's very general.
True.
We want what is more specific. So this person is born on that day, but the ascendant is in Virgo. Transits are going to be specific to Virgo. A person born 2 hours later, it's going to be from Libra. A person 2 hours later. You always want to look for what's more specific, not more general. But you must use both. If you don't use both when you're looking at transits, you won't get it. Because let's say that you see Jupiter aspecting the 7th house and the ruler of the 7th house. That's great. And you think, oh, maybe marriage. Jupiter's aspecting the 7th house and the 7th house ruler might be marriage. If you don't notice that Saturn is transiting 7 houses away from the moon, then you're going to be wrong. So, but you have to use both. So you may see Jupiter in the 7th house from the moon, aspecting the ruler of the 7th house from the moon, and think it's great. But if you don't see that Saturn is now aspecting the 7th house from the natal ascendant or the ruler of the 7th, then you're going to go wrong. Yep. So if you're looking for positive effects, it has to be, you have 4 possibilities: the 7th house ruler, the 7th house from the moon, and the ruler of the 7th house from the moon. Or for career, the 10th house, the ruler of the 10th from the moon, and the ruler of the 10th. You have to look at all of them and balance. Saturn in 2023 goes into this person's 6th house.
Yes, sir.
It's going to be very difficult. And it's not just those planets. When Saturn is in this person's 6th house, it is going to aspect every single planet except the moon and Rahu and Ketu. There's only 9 influences, and 6 of them, there's only 9 influences, and 6 of them are hit by Saturn. Saturn is going to be aspecting Jupiter, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. Saturn's going to throw aspects on Mars and Saturn. It's going to conjunct with Mercury, Venus, Sun, and Jupiter. Brutal. It's brutal. it's not the same as it's
Mhm.
not the same as a terrible dasha bhukti. Like
Mm.
if this person comes to Mars Saturn, I would rather have the transits of Saturn in the sixth house aspecting 6 planets rather than having a Mars Saturn dasha bhukti, because the Mars Saturn dasha bhukti or Saturn Mars, either of those, are going to be difficult. They'll be more karmic. Whereas the one that's where Saturn's aspecting 6 planets, that's going to be generally difficult. It's going to be generally hard on the 6th house and the 3rd house, and it's going to be generally hard. But when you come to 2 planets that are conjunct, then, and they're tightly conjunct, then you can have some events, some very strong events. And the events would be connected to, if it's Mars Saturn, the 8th house would be very bad and the 3rd house would be very bad. And they would be very karmic, which is different from a 2.5-year period where they just can't make anything work right. There's a difference. There's a difference. You could have a sibling die in Mars Saturn. I'm not saying they will, but you could, or you could have with the 8th house, Mars rules the 8th. A Mars Saturn could cause some brutal 8th house effects, which would be karmic, as opposed to a general difficult 2.5 years. When I look at a horoscope, people want to know, well, what do you look at? Well, the first thing I look at is the ascendant degree. Now, the ascendant degree is the middle of the sign, so I don't have to worry about the Bhava chart. The Bhava chart is when planets, if the ascendant's in an early degree or a very late degree, then some of the planets are going to fall in 2 houses instead of 1.
Right.
It's explained in the book. You got to use the Bhava chart, and it's middle of the sign. Now, I use 2 major Varga charts, the Dasamsha and the Navamsha. And they change, the Dasamsha changes every 3 degrees. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. The Navamsha changes 320, 640, 10, 13, 20, 16, 40, 20. But so as soon as I look at this and I say 15 degrees, 25 minutes, I know that the Dasamsha chart is vulnerable, because this is 15 degrees, 25 minutes is just very slightly above the 15 degree mark. So if this person is born 2 minutes earlier, the Dasamsha completely changes. So from 15 degrees ascendant to 18 degrees ascendant, the Dasamsha is Libra. Okay?
Right.
So then we have Venus and Rahu in the 10th house, and it's a wonderful career. Rahu in the 10th is great. Venus is a benefic in the 10th. It's great. It's a successful career, and it's an artistic career. However, if the person's born instead of 8:56 at 8:54 or earlier, then the natal ascendant becomes 14 degrees and 59 seconds, or somewhere under 15 degrees of Virgo. The Dasamsha goes from Libra to Virgo. Now, 2 minutes of birth time earlier is very easy. They're not looking at the clock, they're looking at the baby. But on the other hand, we still can't be sure, because B.V. Raman said you should take the birth time when they cut the umbilical cord. It may have been after 1525. It may have been after the 15 degree ascendant. We don't know. But if they're born earlier by 2 minutes, then it changes to Virgo, and the 10th ruler Mercury is in the 2nd house. And now, instead of an artist and a big career, you have an educator. 10th ruler Mercury in the 2nd. In this chart, I would strongly recommend anything the person can do for Jupiter is critical. Jupiter is aspected, it's combust the sun. It's combust the sun. And the sun is the 12th ruler. It's not just combust the sun. It's combust the sun and the 12th ruler. And Jupiter's combust the sun and 12th ruler, and Jupiter is aspected by Mars. And Jupiter is aspected by Ketu. So Jupiter's aspected by the sun, 12th ruler, by Mars, which is the 8th ruler, and by Ketu. Jupiter is going to cause allergies, liver, gallbladder, spleen, allergies, sensitivities. Jupiter dashas are not going to, bhuktis and dashas are not going to be easy. It's very fortunate this person doesn't have a Jupiter dasha. They'd have to be 100. They were born into a few months of Jupiter dasha. Is this person needs to do as much as possible for Jupiter. So the person, when it comes to higher knowledge, it's very mixed because the ninth ruler is fantastic. The ruler is forming a Raja Yoga, okay, with Mercury. But then you have Jupiter afflicted, and then you have Mars and Saturn aspecting the ninth house. So just this is, there's no question, this is a super spiritual chart. The 12th house dominates the chart for enlightenment. But when it comes to gurus, it's going to be mixed because of Jupiter, because of Mars, Saturn aspecting the ninth. Jupiter gets hurt by Ketu. And Ketu becomes strong by Jupiter. Yeah, I mean, it's a mutual aspect, but it's not like Parivartana yoga. I don't consider it mutual reception. One is hurting the other. Mutual receptions, unless they're in bad signs, they're good, always good. This is not a matter of being good or bad because it's Ketu hurting Jupiter and Jupiter helping Ketu. I mean, the spiritual metaphysical features in this chart are phenomenal. The Ketu dasha, I am concerned for family life. The worst places for Rahu and Ketu are 2 and 8 or 8 and 2, either way. For family life growing up, it's hard. Ketu dasha will not be as difficult for family life, but you would watch out for family life, arguing, bickering with the husband or the family or something like that. But this Ketu will be better than usual because of the aspect within 3 degrees by Jupiter. So I would expect that there could be money coming from metaphysical matters because Ketu is the second house. It would be very spiritual, very metaphysical because of the Jupiter aspect. This is going to be odd, but the person could make money from oil or gas investments. What I like the best is the Venus dasha. The Venus dasha, Venus is the yoga karaka, involved in a Raja yoga karaka. Venus Mercury from 60 to 62 and a half years old is phenomenal. That'll be the best period for travel, higher knowledge, and gurus. It's a tremendous dasha bhukti. Now, if the dasamsha, if the birth time is accurate, and we have the Libra ascendant in the dasamsha, and Venus is in the 10th house of the dasamsha, then the Venus dasha is going to be the best career period. Venus Mercury would be big fame because Mercury rules the 10th in the natal. The biggest fame would be in the Venus dasha, and Venus Mercury could be worldwide fame. Be a lot of travel in Venus dasha. There can be travel in Venus bhuktis. You didn't see anything in my book about dispositors because I don't find them. The basics of Jyotish are powerful. They work very well. The further out you get with the more exotic techniques, the less they work. People talk about them, and I have a sutra about Rahu and Ketu being the most difficult to predict. Yes, I have tried the dispositor of Rahu for the Rahu dasha. No, it doesn't help me. Yes, I have looked for the nakshatra lord and what the nakshatra lord is doing. It sounds wonderful. I don't find it works.
Then how do you interpret Rahu Ketu? If we don't take the dispositors, we don't take the nakshatra lords, then how do we interpret them? Only the houses, that means the placement?
The houses, the placements, the signs, and the aspects they get. So my Rahu is in the 10th house, aspected by Venus and Mars. Tightly. Rahu is 14 degrees. Venus and Mars are 13 and 15 degrees. Tight aspects. And it energizes them. I have a sutra in there. If Saturn is tightly aspecting Rahu, malefic, if there's any malefic near Rahu and Ketu, the dashas are going to be difficult. But what I said in the book is, aside from the aspects that aspect Rahu and Ketu and the houses that they're in. Aside from that, they
Mhm.
are the most difficult to predict. In my experience, they just, if Saturn or malefics are tightly aspecting them, they're not hard to interpret. They're going to be rough. If Jupiter or Venus or Mercury is with one of those Rahu or Ketu, they're going to be good. That's easy. But in the cases where Rahu's not doing much big or much small, they're hard to predict. They're harder to predict than any of the other planets. Using techniques that don't work doesn't make it, in my opinion, doesn't make it any better.
Now here Rahu is not aspected by any planet. It's in the 8th house. This person heads to Rahu Dasha. So what do we say?
The worst places for Rahu and Ketu are the 2nd and the 8th. You've got either one. Could be Rahu in the 8th, could be Ketu in the 8th. Both of those, Rahu and Ketu, are going to be difficult. If there's no aspects onto them, they're not good. The most you could say to Rahu here is that the person could do wonderful things with astrology that's in the 8th house. As far as a dasha, I would do yagyas to Rahu. I would put on Rahu gemstone.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insights on this. I'll move on to the other chart now. So this is Sagittarius rising I've taken now, 23 degrees, 45 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing I'm going to look at is the ascendant degree. It's 23.5 degrees. So that means that if there's any planets in early degrees, they're going to fall in 2 houses. The Bhava chart. So Mercury and Moon are in 2 degrees. They're going to fall in the 6th house and they're going to fall in the 5th house, both. So the Bhava chart means that the ascendant is the middle of the house. So if the ascendant is 23 degrees, then the first house goes from 8 degrees Sagittarius to 8 degrees Capricorn. The second house goes from 8 degrees Capricorn to 8 degrees Aquarius. So that's very, very critical. The other thing that I want to notice here is that the ascendant is very close to a cutoff point, 24 degrees. The Dasamsha, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24. Now, it turns out that the ascendants of Sag, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, they move very quickly. So if the person's born at 11:05 instead of 11:04, the Dasamsha goes from Cancer Dasamsha to Leo Asamsha. The Cancer Dasamsha is terrible. You have a fallen Saturn in the 10th house, and the 10th house ruler is Mars fallen in the 1st house. It's very bad. This is very bad. A fallen planet in the 10th house of the Dasamsha is bad for career. The 10th house ruler fallen is bad for career. But if the person's born at 11:05, then the ascendant goes to 24 degrees, and now it goes to a Leo ascendant Dasamsha. Now you have the ascendant ruler Leo in the 10th house, indicating a successful career with leadership. So you cannot simply use the Navamsha and Dasamsha or any others without checking to see if they are accurate or they're vulnerable. Now, do you know how, notice the moon in this horoscope?
Yes, sir.
Do you know how rare it is to get an exalted moon? You only have 3 degrees. Moon is exalted in the 3rd degree of Taurus. It's not exalted in the 29th degree of Aries or 28 Aries. And then once it passes 3 degrees, it's no longer really exalted. It's good. Moon in 5 Taurus is very good. Moon in 20 Taurus is very good, but it's not the same as the first 3 degrees. And this is exalted in the highest degree, the 3rd degree. Now, before I get to how powerful that is, in the book I say that you've got to look at the foundation of the horoscope. The foundation. I look at everything when I'm looking at a chart, but when I do the horoscope, one of the first things I talk about is the foundation. Foundation is weak. The person's going to experience the world as stressful the whole lifetime. They may be successful in a career, successful in a marriage, but the world is going to be stressful and difficult if the foundation is weak. If the foundation is strong, person is confident and life is not too difficult generally, are the foundations. So the foundation is the ascendant, and the foundation is the sun, and the foundation is the moon. So the sun is very strong here because it is conjunct not just Venus, Venus in its own sign. The sun is conjunct not just the moon, but the fully exalted moon. The sun is with three benefics here. The sun is super strong, so the person's getting confidence and willpower from the sun. The person has a moon that, even though it's a new moon, it's totally irrelevant that the moon is dim, because the moon is exalted in the highest degree, sandwiched in between two benefics. The moon is super strong. The emotional well-being is strong. The ascendant ruler is Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is very afflicted, aspected by Ketu tightly, and it's aspected by Saturn in Saturn's fallen sign, Aries. That's bad. But Jupiter aspects the ascendant. It aspects the ascendant. It's aspecting its own sign, Sagittarius. Therefore, the only weakness, you have the ascendant, the sun, and the moon. The ascendant is strong. The sun is super, the moon is super strong. The ascendant ruler has some weakness, but that's 1 out of 4 or 5 super strong features. Okay, now the brilliance of this horoscope cannot be overstated. Intelligence. The intelligence and the brilliance cannot be overstated because, first of all, you have Moon Mercury conjunct, which is tremendous, and intellectual, mental. Secondly, those fall in the 5th house, the house of the mind. Then you have Jupiter in the 5th house. I mean, it's a strong intelligence. But Mercury is in deep trouble. The retrograde is okay. It just means it's passive. They're not afflictions. They're just passive. The difficulty is Mercury, even though it's conjunct this extremely exalted moon, too close to the 8th house ruler. If Mercury was conjunct the exalted moon and the moon ruled the 9th house, it'd be fantastic. But you can never let a planet get next to the 8th or 12th or 6th ruler that close. 4 or 5 degrees away, it's okay. But the same degree, it's going to be in big trouble. And this is where there's going to be potential troubles in love relationships are possible, and potential troubles in career are possible because Mercury rules the 10th. So the 10th house. Now, if the person does a career, the 10th ruler is conjunct to 8th ruler. If the person does a career in astrology, psychic, research behind the scenes, the CIA or KGB, something hidden from view, it's fine. But if the person does not do an 8th house career, there's big career troubles. Now, the 12th house is going to be quite strong because of the aspects of 3 benefics and the 9th house rule. The sun's a malefic aspecting the 12th house, but the sun rules the 9th house. So even it brings some good energy. So the 12th house is going to be very strong. The 12th ruler is not strong because Mars is near to Saturn, is fallen and near Saturn. But the 12th house is getting a lot of energy. Now, the 8th house is a serious problem. It's a serious problem. Saturn's in a bad sign in Cancer. Mars is fallen in Cancer. This can be bad for the reproductive system. The person has to get tested for the reproductive system all the time. If there's anything that goes on, you go straight to the doctor. This person might have troubles getting any kind of inheritances. Money from unearned means. Money from wills, legacies, insurance companies could be problematic. Reproductive system problems could be there. There could be accidents that occur during life. And in the dasha of Saturn, Mars, it's the age of 67 to 69, from around 66 and a half to 68 years old, that Saturn Mars is dangerous. They could die in that period. So knowing that, if they go for yagyas, for the moon, for the ascendant, or even for Saturn, because it's a Saturn dasha, they can make their way through it. Be very careful. I would go meditate at an ashram or stay out. I wouldn't go out into the public. I would stay home. I would be very careful in Saturn Mars. Mars Saturn at the age of 15 and a half to 16 and a half may also have been difficult. Now the Mars Saturn aspecting the second house, it's possible that this person had difficult childhood because of family life. Family life may have been difficult. Now, the Mars Saturn in the eighth is terrible. The Mars Saturn aspecting the second is somewhat good. Not good for family life. It's aspecting, Mars is aspecting its exaltation sign, Saturn is aspecting its own sign. The Mars, so the second house, it may be good for money. The person must be careful to be honest when making money. There could be the possibility of making money not in a good way, maybe from selling alcohol or from cheating. Have to be a little careful because the second house ruler Saturn is in the eighth. It's in bad sign with fallen Mars. There could be difficulties. The seventh house, the fourth house. So Jupiter is afflicted and it rules the first and the fourth. It's going to hurt the fourth more than the first because the first house is aspected, but Jupiter aspects the ascendant, its own sign. That's going to help the first house. There's nothing helping the fourth house. The fourth house ruler, Jupiter, is aspected by Ketu, aspected by Saturn. It's not so good. So it hurts the mother, land, homes, mother. It hurts that a little bit worse. Now, there's something here. I don't think you can't see it here, but one of the sutras in the book is when a planet is conjunct with Rahu, that planet becomes easily accessible. It doesn't become strong. It doesn't become powerful. It becomes easily accessible. Now, if you're using Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, you're going to see Rahu at 17 degrees Libra and Uranus at 10 degrees Libra. If Rahu is near Uranus, then in the Western chart, the North Node, wherever the North Node is, a person's going toward that North Node, okay? So if there's a planet there, it becomes easy to access. So if the person tries to access Uranus, air travel, astrology, metaphysics, it will be super successful. It doesn't mean they will. It means if they do, it will work. Let's say that Rahu was 5 degrees or 10 degrees away from Venus. It doesn't mean they'll go toward Venus, but if they do go toward Venus, it will be so easy to be successful. If Mercury is near the North Node and they go for a career with writing, teaching, communications, it'll be so easy and successful simply because the planet is near the North Node, and you're always going toward the North Node anyway. Notice your cravings and desires, you're craving that anyway if you go toward a planet near there. So if this person does something with Uranus, it becomes very easy and successful. And this person, because the 10th ruler Mercury is conjunct the 8th ruler Moon, it would be so successful with astrology or metaphysics, things like that.
And Mars's aspect on Rahu?
This aspect on Rahu, if the person is in a Rahu dasha, it will give them mechanical, technical skills in that period. The Mars aspecting Rahu is not going to help the 11th house with eldest sibling or friends. So the 11th house here is very mixed. Rahu in the 11th is great for most 11th house things, but not for eldest sibling because it's a malefic. But Jupiter's aspect, I mean, this is a strong 11th house, Rahu in the 11th aspected by Jupiter. Makes the 11th very strong for large sums of money, for powerful friends and groups. But the Mars aspect onto that Rahu within 4 degrees, that does not help with the eldest sibling. There could be troubles with the eldest sibling. It doesn't help it.
So can we say Mars is aspecting, though Mars is aspecting, so can we can this person have issues or problems with the landed property or any purchase of house or something, maybe some disputed land or something this person gets entrapped in? Can we forewarn this person for that? If
Where are you taking landed property from?
Mars is the Karaka significator for land and
Yeah.
Bhukarak.
Yeah, I got it. That's not the way I do it. If a person that's to me, that's like using the dispositors. It's too far. It's too far from the basics. If Mars is aspecting the 4th house,
Right.
the 4th house, in other words, the 4th house is land and property. Because, I mean, Karakas are important, but Karakas are important. Mars is not helping with landed property. Mars is so devastated.
Gee.
It's in the 8th house, strike 1. It's fallen, strike 2. It's 8 degrees away from Saturn, strike 3. Why do we have to go any further with Mars? It's already devastated. Do I care where Rahu is? It's already devastated.
Yes.
And when it comes to hemmed in, they need to be tightly hemmed, not 4 signs away. Mars as the Karaka of land is no good. Mars as the Karaka of brothers and sisters is no good. But the houses are very, very important.
Right.
To say something about Rahu hurting land because of Mars, Mars would have to be, you'd have to be talking about the 4th house.
Okay, so from 4th house, if we take Rahu is in the 8th house, so that we can say
this is not a good 4th house because Jupiter's afflicted, and Mars and Saturn as 4th house Karakas for land. They're not Karakas for the whole house, but they're Karakas for land. They're not good for land. I mean,
for siblings also not good.
No.
Thanks, sir. Thanks for the analysis.
Everybody does it. Everybody does astrology different.
This is how it should be. It's such a straight and a simple approach that you're opting, and it's becoming so easy to read the chart.
The question is how accurate you get. If you can get accurate by saying it, look, if you can get accurate by saying the moon escapes Kalasarpa yoga and the person has the effects, then I don't care. It has to be accurate. It has to work. And so if you understand the basics really, really, really well, you'll get a lot of accuracy. And when that happens, you're going to start to find the further away you go from the basics, the worse you're going to get. But what you have to understand is that you can't know everything because there's going to be lots of areas that are not very strong or very weak. And to go further into other techniques is not going to make it any better. Those are going to be the places where you say, well, that's not clear from the horoscope. At least that's how I do it. There's another thing, you can't see it here, but in the Western chart, we have what's called the midheaven. The midheaven is the highest part of the chart. So the Western chart, of course, is round, way, way, way up at the top. You see that north node, that Rahu. You will not see that in a Hindu horoscope, but I could see it because I know both. That Rahu, that close. So the midheaven in the Western is 13 Scorpio and Uranus is 11 Scorpio. Now that is something that is going to indicate the possibility of a big career.
Right.
The other aspects of that chart, I told you the career is problematic because the 10th ruler is too close to the 8th ruler, and if the dasam is accurate, it's very bad. But when I see this, I say, It could have a big career because of North Node right at the midheaven. So if the person does a metaphysical career, it could be very powerful. Oof, this is such a long astrology. It's a long road. The more you keep it simple, because it's complicated, Then there's the other way. A lot of people they don't want to ever get that detailed. So they just look at it and psychically. And if they're psychic enough, they can get accurate results. It's not a matter of believing it. It's whether I've seen it be accurate. Yes, I've seen people be accurate. I've seen people be accurate psychically. I saw my teachers in India do it. They're more, sometimes they would say something and I say, where are you getting that? And they would say something from the horoscope that didn't make any sense. They were getting it psychically. And if you get it psychically, that's great. But the problem is that, look, first of all astrologers are psychic or they wouldn't be in the field. So when I tell you that I don't use the psychic stuff, it's not an accurate statement. I do astrology by focusing on the basics and all that, but there's a psychic energy that comes in. You can't help it. Sometimes I'll be looking at a chart. It doesn't say anything medical, and something in my brain says medical.
Right.
So I start looking. I say, where is it? Where is this? Why do I keep having this thought? And that but I have to find it in the chart. Otherwise, I don't, And sometimes there are times when I get the psychic impression, but I can't find it in the chart and I don't say it. And sometimes the client will say, well, I'm a healer. And I will tell them, I have to tell you that I had a psychic impression, but I don't. It happens. There's nothing wrong, not what I do. When I was studying astrology in 1978, I had a teacher. He taught astrology, he taught Kabbalah, he taught psychic. I took all of his classes. And one day he said, now we're going to do psychic. Right. And so we'd sit with a partner, take an object, a keychain or a ring from the other person. So I took I took his ring. He gave me his ring. I held onto his ring and I closed my eyes and I started making up this story that came to me. I said, there's a girl that you like. She really likes you and you don't even know it. And she likes you. And that's what I get. And the guy says, everybody tells me that she likes me, but I don't believe it. So it worked. It worked. Okay.
Wow.
Right then and there, I said, this is not for me. Because I would never know when I was accurate and when I wasn't. I would never know it. So I had the psychic energy, but I didn't want any part of it. That you shouldn't. I have a friend who's got 5 planets. He's an astrologer with 5 planets in the 8th house. And he's just very psychic when he does readings. For the psychic, either Ketu is super strong, the 8th house. The 8th house is psychic, intuitive. If a person has a lot of planets in the 8th house, I always say you're very psychic. Mercury Ketu, Jupiter Ketu, Venus Ketu, any benefic with Moon Ketu. The most common aspects of professional psychics is the Moon Ketu. But anything with Ketu that's a benefic is going to be very psychic. Go out, look for the Braha Sutras. Now you can get it. Now you can get it on an ebook. It won't be so expensive. But I'm telling you, if you live in a country where you can actually get this, you want to get it. You want to get it for the pictures. Okay, so here's one of the pictures, and then on the sutras, it's the most beautiful book that I've ever published. It's worth having the hard copy. Every time somebody gets it, they email me, oh my God, what this book is like to hold. It's, and as I said, it's just historic. It's just everything about, I never would have thought of the name, the Braha Sutras, in a billion years.
Can you see this? No. I just love this book.
Most of it I didn't really write. Most of it came from the gods. You'll see it. Read it, you go, oh my God. You go, oh wow, look at this. The insights would come.
Yes, sir.
let me tell you something that I told my wife.
Yes, sir.
I mean, for me, look,
Mhm.
I don't. You think I make a lot of money on these? I do there
Yeah.
because it's going to save people time.
Yes.
But I'll tell you something.
Yes.
I was talking about, why it's sold 100 books, but I thought it should have sold 300-400 already. Who knows? Books are always a slow process. But I said to my wife, I said, a lot of people will get this book when something occurs in their horoscope,
Hmm.
when Uranus or Jupiter hits something, because I'm telling you,
Hmm.
if they're into astrology and they read this book, it's going to change their process. And so that's not going to happen just because, oh, the book came out, I'll get it. When something hits in their chart, when Uranus hits the ascendant, when Jupiter hits the 10th house cusp, suddenly, oh, I think I'll buy that book. That's when they'll get it. The same as, like people would say, oh, I'm going to get a reading. Oh, my friend's going to get a reading. I don't hear from them for 4 months. It's
Hmm.
until the chart makes it so that
Yes.
they come for the reading.
When it's time, it's time.
I suspect it's going to be that way with this book because one guy said it's going to radically alter the way he practices astrology.
Hmm.
Just radically alter it. It's going to save people time.
It's.
I always say the same thing. Isabel Hickey wrote this book. She wrote it when she was 70. And I said, all I have to do is learn everything in this book. But I soon found out that it's not so easy to process 70 years of wisdom. But this book is easier because every sutra has its own, and you know what people have told me? This I don't like so much. I want them to read it in order, but they
Yes.
love the sutras, so they just skip around to
Skip
different sutras.
around. Yes,
skip
I was
around.
I was doing that. I was trying to go to Rahu Ketu somehow. And
Yeah.
this moon Ketu combination, is a typical for professional mediums and psychics. You've mentioned this Sutra 107.
Listen to this. This is also good. One lady told me I decided I was going to read 30 minutes a night, but she said she'd get to the 30 minutes. Okay, I'll just read one more. Okay, I'll just read one more. And the next thing you know,
Yes.
she's read another 10 sutras.
And sir, I arrived today in the morning. I was so thrilled, so much looking forward to reading it. I quickly read, so I could really finish so many pages. I said, no, I have to read it. And I didn't feel like closing.
Here's the thing. You can't put it, it's hard to put down. The way it's written makes it hard to put down.
Yes.
So what you have to understand is that the people that have read it 4 and 5 times, they tell me that every time I read it, I get something new. It's because you can only process for 30 or 40 minutes or an hour, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And after a while, you keep reading it, but you can't process it.
Yes.
So you read it over and over.
It's lucid. Actually, it's very free flowing, that is also very simple. English language is very easy to understand. That is also very important. And I like the fonts of all the books are so big.
And this is how you can understand that I never went into astrology for the money. If I went into it for the money, I could make that book 150 pages shorter in a heartbeat. I could take out the photos, I could take out the Sanskrit, and I could make the print as small as all the other books. But I don't do it I do it for the people. When the Beatles made their albums back in the 60s, they came out with these, double albums and with photos and all the lyrics. And they said we wanted to give our friends, our people, the most we could give. That's how I feel with the books.
Yes.
It should be big print and, the pictures. And I have a friend who I asked him to, when I started writing, I said, could you do a couple of Sanskrit things here? And he put it in. He did not want to be credited for the Sanskrit because some people, the Sanskrit world is very picky and very perfectionist. And he was afraid that people would criticize this and criticize that. So I didn't put his name for the Sanskrit, but I told him he added so much to the book. And my favorite Sanskrit is now begins the Braha Sutras. and
Yes.
thus ends the Braha Sutram. That just makes me laugh.
Yes. And I'm sure the experience of writing this book must have been great as well.
It
I'm
was
sure.
it was paradoxical. This
Right.
was the most fun book I've ever written. Why?
Hmm.
Because the other books you write a chapter here and a chapter here.
Right.
Every time I wrote a sutra, I would run to my wife and say, listen to this. And she said, yes, thank God you said that. Got it said. The one we call the Vashti Sutra is about mundane astrology and how bad it is. They said in 1987, the world was going to have world peace because of the harmonic convergence. It never worked. So one of the sutras is how awful mundane astrology is today. It's just nobody's using it well.
No.
And when she read that, I wrote 3 pages, 4 pages about how badly mundane astrology is. And finally, after they make 20 predictions and one comes true, hey, I made the prediction. They don't tell you all the ones that went wrong. And so she was so thrilled to see that in print because it took her 10 years to stop listening to the mundane predictions because they never worked.
Right.
There are ways that they do work when planets go into signs. When Uranus goes into Taurus and Bitcoin hits, when Pluto goes into Scorpio, that works. But saying these planets are in bad shape and bad relationship with these planets and the world's going to have a big problem, that never worked.
That never works.
So, but what was so fun was every time I'd write a sutra that came out of the ethers, I would run to it. It'd be so thrilling. But it was also the hardest book I ever wrote. It doesn't read that way. You read it and you go, oh, it's written very easily, and the sutras make sense. There's a good 20 sutras that I didn't know before I wrote the book. I'd be writing and I'd say, what is the answer to this? And I would get the answer. It was the hardest book to write. And I finished 216 sutras, 108 times 2. And then I said, but I forgot, I wanted to write one on confusing horoscopes, but I didn't write it because I knew it would be really hard to write. It took 10 pages. So after the book was done, I wrote the 10 pages on the confusing horoscope and pulled out a small sutra that didn't mean much. And then I would write a sutra on Pluto entering Scorpio, which was 8 pages, and I'd pull out a small one. And then I'd write the 20 pages on nakshatras. It's the longest sutra in the book. And I rarely talk about it on videos because it's very controversial. But there's 20 pages on nakshatras. That was written at the end. It took me a solid month to write that one sutra. You won't know it when you read it. It reads very easily. In order to write something really clearly, it takes much more effort than to just write and they get confused. It takes more effort to write it simply.
Yes.
Hardest. I think it's the only book that really took me every day over a year. I did have the art and practice of ancient Hindu astrology took more than a year because I wasn't going to work on it every day. This one I worked on it every day and it took more than a year. It was harder than any of the others, but it's my favorite book right now.
It's really, I think it's a wonderful creation. I'm sure this is going to stay. And my name is also going to be there forever. I'm so excited.
Your name is going to be there forever in the acknowledgements.
I'm so grateful.
And you know what? I took a lot of people from Facebook that for years have commented on my posts, and I just put their names in there. So if the book lasts for 50 years, their names will be.
Yes, absolutely. No, I'm really grateful. And thank you so much for making time and giving us all the sutras insights. Of course. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
And hope to see you soon.
What am I going to do now?
You're going to write another one.
Why not?
You can take a break. You can take a breather, and then you can think of something. Maybe something better comes in.
I'm telling you, this book is my 40 years experience. I don't know where else to get anything else.
Yes, I know.
Very
Thank
good.
you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. And please give my regards to Vashti ji also.
Vashti?
Yes. Thank you, sir. Pranam.
Okay.